Wasn't that fabulous? Very exciting. So we're just setting up a few more things, but I just wanted to make an announcement that following the book talk, Dr. Ruth will have some books on sale in the room across the hall, room 146. So if you'd like to purchase a book, or if you've brought something that you would like for Dr. Ruth to sign, or if you'd like to take a picture with her, we'll be lining up in room 146 where you can buy something if you like, or bring what you have, and then bring you in for your picture opportunity with Dr. Ruth immediately following the talk back. So we're just going to wait a few more minutes, and while we do, I'd like to introduce Dr. Ruth's partner in crime this evening, a longtime friend, Dr. Hope Jensen Leichter, who is the Elbenwood Professor of Education here at Teachers College and the director of the Elbenwood Center for Study of Family as Educator, which is dedicated to improving education through discovering the creative intelligence in all families. For decades, she has been teaching courses on the family as educator, focusing on family memories and community education through museums. And as you saw in the movie, Dr. Ruth completed her doctoral studies here at Teachers College, where Dr. Hope Leichter was her advisor. Dr. Hope is also one of the forerunners on storytelling and has been doing amazing work here at Teachers College, and was delighted. And they've actually done this sort of show a few times where they've sat down to discuss their life and their works and the importance of sharing stories. And as you could see in today's story, it was definitely one that is worth sharing. I also want to just mention that as part of the RSVP process, you submitted questions. So those questions will be interspersed throughout Dr. Hope Leichter's interview of Dr. Ruth. So in just a few more minutes, here we go. We'll just bring our guests of honor on stage. So one more time, a round of applause for Dr. Ruth Westheimer and Dr. Hope Leichter.
Thank you. Thank you.
I say thank you to you.
Thank you, thank you. I have to let Hope at least ask me 2 questions.
I only get 2?
A few more.
Well,
Go ahead.
first of all, I want to thank you and the wonderful filmmakers and everyone who's here for your generosity and spending your time on a birthday week with us, and for showing us this film, which is really remarkable. You're a roller coaster grandmother, but the film is a roller coaster of emotions. It's really quite extraordinary that it covers so much. It's about sex, and I don't mean to downplay sex in front of the world's greatest sex educator, but it's about so much more, particularly about the Holocaust. And so I want to ask you questions about that, but before we go to that, you belong at Teachers College, and I just want to mention that for everyone to remember.
First, tell the story that I told you.
Yes, first of all, you got your doctorate here.
Not only did I get my doctorate, when I got accepted here, I said to Hope, right in this hallway here that you saw in the film, I said, Professor Leichter, I do have to tell you something that you have to know. I just flunked an exam at the new school. And Hope Leichter famously said, so what? So I want you to know, thank you for having said that, and every time when I look at you, I do remember that.
Well, you know what? I've heard that story before, and actually, I tend to believe it, because I had a sense from the beginning that there was something special, and I think it was a very wise decision.
And you got me a good-looking doctoral dissertation advisor, who one time, all of you might remember that, David Goslin, one time in the hallway, right here, he said, this is my last semester doing the doctoral dissertation seminar. If I don't get a chapter from you by the end of this week, I'm dropping you. Guess what? He got the chapter.
Because he was handsome.
And
Or was it just because you wanted your dissertation done?
And we are still good friends. Near Washington, we are still good friends. Every time he says hello to you.
Well,
but I wanted to tell you something when you said about the animation and about the film. I
was wondering whether I could ask you about the animation, because
I
that's very
first-
special.
First, when they called me, Rafi Marmo, I had no idea who he was. When he called me, he said, I want like to do a documentary about you. I said, no, thank you. Enough already. I've had all of those television programs, and I did just the BBC, a little documentary. No, thank you. He kept on talking a little. I kept on listening. He sent me a film he did called No Place on Earth. That sentence, of course, with my background, which you just saw, that sentence resonated. I watched the film, and I said, yes, I will do a film. He did a film about 34 Jewish people in Ukraine who survived underground because the local population fed them for a year and a half. So I thought this is really something. I'm a member of the Museum of Jewish Heritage, and I thought this is something from my background, I should do that. He then said that there is a filmmaker, Ryan White. I said, do the same thing, send me the films. Ryan, the filmmaker, owes me 10 hours of my life because I watched his films. He did a film on Proposition 8 about homosexuality. He did a film that many of you must have seen, a series on Netflix called The Keepers, about a nun who was killed in Baltimore because the next day she would have reported on some sexual problems with a priest and a child. So somebody killed her, they still don't know who. So I watched all of his films, and I have to say, I did my homework, and I have to say that I am really applauding them for doing a wonderful film. When you say something about the Holocaust that I know you know, because your late husband, whom I knew, comes from Vienna and had a similar story. In my particular case, as you saw, it's true that German Jews kind of don't show their emotions easily. But I did know that here I will have to cooperate and will be having to say that. And they did something brilliant. Anybody here who is a filmmaker, when they said that they're going to use animation, because they didn't have enough material from the time that I left Frankfurt, right, from the age of 10. Even so, I had the letters of my parents and grandparents, but there wasn't enough data. They said animation. I was very worried. I thought they're going to make me look like Pinocchio or like Mickey Mouse or something like that. I tell you, the two people who did the animation were brilliant, because if you remember, they showed the Frankfurt railroad station. Right. They showed my mother and grandmother as if the almost only people at that railroad station saying goodbye. That wasn't so. There were all of the other mothers and grandmothers. The fathers had been taken to labor camps, not concentration camps. So they did that brilliantly, because I talk a lot in the classes that I am privileged to teach here.
And we're so glad you're teaching them.
Thank you. And I talk a lot about loneliness, and I talk a lot about the concern of the art of conversation getting lost because people are on their phones. And they did that because you can actually feel the loneliness at that railroad station. And as you saw, I did the same thing that my father did, turned around and forced himself to smile, which I did too. And I did sing with the children on the train. I sang the German songs. I sang the songs of the synagogue. Rabbi Lebeau is here. He's lucky. I'm not going to make him sing right now. But it's interesting because for a place like Teachers College, when people say, how come I can use humor, because in the Talmud says that a lesson taught with humor is a lesson retained, but it's very interesting for people like you. I did a longitudinal study for my master's at the New School, following the 50 children who left Germany, Frankfurt, with me on the train to go to Switzerland. And none of them committed suicide. None of them became drug addicts or depressed. And that's because of what you have taught your whole life, of the early socialization, the early years of my life and of the others that I followed, were in an intact family, where people were loved and touched and raised. And that's what I believe that part of what Teachers College stands for, is to make sure that we give that message of the early socialization being so important. I want to say one more sentence about in November of 1938, there was a conference in Evian. And the conference was attended by 31 people. Even Roosevelt sent an emissary. The conference was attended and with the mission, let's save German Jewry. And the conference failed miserably. The only thing that happened out of that conference, November 38, England, despite the fact the dark clouds on the horizon, took 10,000 Jewish children to safety to England. Holland, Belgium, France, and Switzerland agreed to take 300. For some reason, which has some reasons, I was sent to Switzerland. If I had been in Holland, Belgium, or France, I would not be alive. No. So part of that history, that's why I'm very pleased with the documentary.
I think you should be, and we have, I have a lot of questions, but we've also had questions that were sent to us from the audience beforehand, and one of them that I think fits right into what you're saying is asking about your early childhood relationships with your parents and your grandmother, and what that was like. And in a way, you've already answered it, but that's vital.
You see my delight when I talk to my grandchildren.
Yes.
And my daughter has her doctorate from Teachers College. And my grandson went to Hunter. And I was sitting with Hope a few days ago, Wednesday, in our gown at the graduation. My granddaughter graduated from Barnard. And I have to tell you, I was sitting there and I thought, how fortunate I am that I made that decision, despite the fact that I go every year to Israel, that I still am very concerned about Israel. Didn't think that I would not live there, but how wonderful that I came to this country and look what has happened. And my early years were very successful in all of the things that you are concerned about, the storytelling, the relationship. That grandmother had nothing else to do but to take care of me. My mother helped my father in the business, and so I was really surrounded not only by Orthodox Judaism, going with my father to synagogue every Friday night. I was an only child. Even so, I was a girl, but there was no boy, so the girl could go. And he bought me an ice cream every Friday night. He took enough money in the pocket of his jacket, because after the Sabbath would have arrived, he wouldn't touch money. So I do remember that I got an ice cream every single Friday night, going to the synagogue. So all of those things that bear on those souvenirs, on the remembrance, were good ones. What is very sad, and that's why I'm on the board of the Museum of Jewish Heritage,
Right.
and what everybody, you all have to go and see it twice, the first time you're going to be very upset, because outside of the museum, I was at a board meeting this morning at 8. Outside the museum is one of those cattle cars. And every time I see that, I know that my family was transported in one of those cars. I see the pictures inside, and you saw some of the Yad Vashem at the Israel place of remembrance. So very important, especially these days, to be able to stand up and be counted and to say how concerned all of us are.
I'm really, it's also moving. It's hard to even talk about in a way, but I do believe, as you know, for a long time I've been working on family memories and what does and does not get passed on from one generation to another. And your work and your experience in this film are such an important example of why this matters and why it gives us insights, not just necessarily happy, nostalgic insights, but insights into the kinds of adjustments people make in tragic and difficult circumstances. And so I think one of the things I ask people is about grandparents, and you've done so much on that, and you've written for adults and for children, roller coaster grandparents.
So the roller coaster grandparent graphic novel, because we have to get to the younger children to be able, that's the only books they read, because the other thing is all on that iPhone. The roller coaster, I did purposely talk about how my father was taken and how very sad and upset I was. But I also know that children have to have a way of being able to take a deep breath and go on after you tell them something tragic. And that's why I talk about being a grandma, taking 2 of my 4 grandchildren to an amusement park. We get measured for a ride. They can go on the ride and I'm too short. So I try to do that by making an impact by saying that if we teach with this kind of intensity, we also have to see that people can live with it, not to be frightened.
Can I ask you about another aspect of memory that we've worked on together and you've done so much on, and that has to do with music and memory. We've talked about that a lot, and we worked with some of the people from the Zamir Chorale, and I remember one of your birthdays, they flew in Alpenhorns from Switzerland for the birthday. And
beautiful Alpenhorns.
Yes,
right?
Amazing. So if you could just say something about the role of music in...
I think I did a book called Musically Speaking.
Yes.
A Life Through Song, University of Pennsylvania Press. And there are some melodies from the synagogue that I carry with me in my head. So when I become a little sad about some happenings, like a husband of many years dying, I do these melodies console me. Mm-hmm. They kind of, the word consoling, I think, is the right one, because they come from a background where there was love and caring and intellectual stimulation and this idea of educating. So the first boyfriend who brought his books home, it's difficult today at teachers' college to imagine that these people did not let me go to high school. It wasn't just me, all of the girls, because they knew that we couldn't stay in Switzerland. They knew we had to make a living because the parents would not be around. So the best way to train a girl is to make her be a housemaid. And that's why I do remember my father, not only the melodies, but I remember the message that nobody can take education from you. And that's what Teachers College is all about. So I think I have to tell you something that's brand new, happened yesterday. You don't know yet?
All right.
You
this
don't
is
know
exciting.
Yet. Even so, we were together for my birthday yesterday, and there was klezmer music, Jewish music.
Wonderful music.
So in they decided the Shoah Foundation, that's Steven Spielberg's foundation, who did who did us a big favor talking about the Holocaust.
Right.
They just will take the head of that. It just happened this week. They will take the animation. They'll add something, and the book, the Holocaust Grandma, will have also a 12-minute movie to go with it, because children are so geared to visual, so that the content is going to be in terms of the book, of the reading, but also a visual film to go with it.
Well, that's great news.
And you will get a copy.
Thank you, thank you. I will find children to show it to and share it with. Let me ask you something else we've talked about a lot, and again, it's one of these things that I have looked at for years and that I think you look at, and that is a question, and it applies particularly in a time when people are moving around, and whether it's tragic or other circumstances, where is home?
Very important question.
You have had experiences in so many places, so many cultures, and so many forced moves.
I never thought that I would not live in Israel. But I also knew that I wanted to see this great country, America. One of the reasons, an uncle of mine, so my parents not around, a brother of my mother was fortunate to be able to immigrate from Germany to Shanghai. Anybody here knows about that immigration, Rabbi Lebeau?
Right.
There were Shanghai, you could get there if you could buy a ticket.
Yeah.
He went from Shanghai to San Francisco. After my already having been in Israel, I wanted one time to meet that Uncle Max, because I wanted to see if he's as short as me. Since I don't have any other people. So America was in my head of saying, here is an Uncle Max who went from Germany to Shanghai, then to San Francisco. So I had some kind of connection with this America. So I want to say something that's happening to me these days. I say in the film, and I hope knows, and Rabbi Lebeau, they know that, I have stayed away from politics. Since I'm an American citizen, I've always voted, but I have stayed away from any political issues. And what Leora, my granddaughter, when she makes me say about women liberation and all that, but that apart, these days I changed my mind. Because of my background, I'm very upset when I see children being separated from their families.
Right.
And I'm very upset about the issue of abortion and the issue of family planning not having funds. So there are three things that I have to stand up to be counted. The other stuff about politics, I leave to the politicians. I leave to other people. But I have to know, even at the age of now 91, that you have to stand up and to worry about anti-Semitism. That's why that exhibit, I tell everybody to come to the museum, and you have to come twice. The exhibit is about Auschwitz. Whenever, this morning I did a little television there for the museum, and whenever I see a picture from Auschwitz, first I see if maybe I can recognize somebody from my family. I've never been able to. There are other people who could do that. I've never found anybody. And also you saw with that German word, verschollen, disappearing, which is very hard for me, not even having any date. But people have to go to the museum twice. First time you're going to be upset, but then the second time I learn things about the rise of anti-Semitism and the way that what has happened in Europe that I did not know. So you learn, the first time you're going to be very upset, but then you have to go again in order to learn more. It's a fantastic exhibit, and I'm very pleased that we have it.
And I think you should be very pleased with your museum and the support you give them for taking that on. because there is this so-called issue of Holocaust fatigue. And
Exactly. And
that
Holocaust
it
denial.
should not be that way.
Denial
Denial.
and fatigue. Right.
And so it's particularly important
Right.
that something like that be done, even though it's so hard to face. So let me ask you something else about being a celebrity. This is an easy one and a fun one, but you are a celebrity, and some people think celebrities are not human and they lose touch with people. But I've had several experiences with you, and I've heard a lot of other stories of other people who've had similar experiences. And I'll just start off with your granddaughter's graduation from Barnard.
Sitting next to you.
Sitting-
In my Columbia gown.
Yes,
Teachers
yes,
College
yes,
Columbia
yes.
gown.
It was a great moment, but we were going to go together, and we planned this route out so we could get near the Barnard side. We get as far as the gate,
And I wave, and she waves.
Well, yes, but before that, a wonderful security guard who did a fabulous job grabs your hand.
Right.
Dr. Ruth, I listened to you on the radio. You changed my life. And one of the things is that you are a joyous celebrity. You're also a celebrity with antenna everywhere, because he's grabbing you and I'm kind of following behind. And he was doing a wonderful, wonderful job, and you were very appreciative, and he was. But all the time you said, ho, where are you? Are you there? So while you're being dragged to the pinnacle of importance, you're worrying about whether I'm right there with you.
I should hope so.
Well, but
I'm not the
that-
only one. All of the people take good care of you. Where's CJ? He's here, right here.
Yes, but
Raise your hand. Where's my
But
Chinese
you see,
friend?
I've seen this
You're
so
here,
many
yeah.
times that you are thinking of other people. In fact, heard a story that when you walk onto the floor, and this applies Tuesdays when you come to teach your wonderful course with us. Somebody
Next
was
year
saying
again.
last- absolutely, and on. There's not going to be an end. But when you walk onto a floor, it's like a tornado of good energy and light. And that's the way I feel every Tuesday. And it's always not just that you are there because you're a celebrity, but you're always thinking of other people. Who's going to help? Who's saying? Who can I thank?
But that has partly to do
Yes.
with these early successful years of my life, that after all I was 10 and a half, which is not being a baby. So these early successful years of my life in a loving family, in an intellectual environment, in a very Jewish environment, and I think that went with me throughout my life. The one word that always comes back to me when you say that is that I'm grateful, because I do realize that I could have been Holland, Belgium, or France, and I wouldn't be here.
Right.
So
right.
that fact of having been saved has made me also have an obligation to help others in other areas, not only in that. And that's why I think that going into the helping profession was the right thing for me.
That's really important, and it's good to hear. And when you're the recipient of it, it's really very, very nice. And to have that kind of sense of celebrity.
So I have to tell you something I'm not supposed to say.
Oh, good, a secret.
Promise me not to repeat it. I'm not supposed to say that I want to get an Academy nomination, but you can say it.
All right, say it loud, Academy nomination.
I could be disqualified, but this is the, halls of knowledge and of privacy and good relationships here, so don't quote me. But I do want it. Now, I also have to tell you,
Yes.
all of you young people who are in the business of making movies, even Edith, even older people like you, I was very aware of being careful with Ryan because he was constantly behind that camera. Now we are very good friends. But for the year that we went together to Israel, he's not Jewish. And I was glad about that. I wanted a different perspective. But I also made him naked. I didn't go there with him. I made him naked dunk in the Kinneret where Jesus went into the water to be baptized. I sent somebody else, a guy, with him. But I thought it would give it a different dimension of somebody from a different faith. And so I'm very glad. Where is she? Where's my Protestant friend here? Where's she? Stand up, tell them what's going to happen to me. They don't know, stand up. So, introduce yourself.
My name is Chloe Breyer. I'm a friend of Betty Reardon's, and I direct the Interfaith Center of New York. I'm a Episcopal priest. My sister is Jewish, and
Your father is Jewish too.
and he is also Jewish. Exactly right.
Judge Breyer. So tell them what's happening to me. Invite them.
We are giving Dr. Ruth an award because she doesn't have enough. She's very shy and retiring. We thought it's about time to celebrate you, Dr. Ruth. On the 24th at the Interfaith Center of New York, we have a dinner. We're honoring you and the presiding bishop of the Episcopal Church who preached at the royal wedding about love. So we thought that would be a
Perfect.
good,
And you're inviting hope.
and we're inviting
Good.
I accept immediately. I definitely will come. Well, that's very good news.
And since we're asking each other in public, I just thought maybe that since you're very articulate about the importance of separation of families and how we at the Interfaith Center are working on a bill up in Albany called the SCAR Act, which is seeking to make those places that had to hold unaccompanied children when they were separated from their parents be able to tell the state that they have children in their care, because last summer they couldn't do that because the federal government told them no. So now that you're involved in politics, I might take you up on that.
Well, this is all really good news, but let me just add an addenda. I understand, and in fact had a discussion last night with some people about whether you're a feminist or not, but I do understand, and I'll come back to that in a minute, why you have been cautious in wanting to stay out of politics, given the kinds of work you're doing professionally. But you do have 2 children with doctorates, and Joel, and some books, your
Joel's
own, and
book.
Joel's through the Teachers College Press. We've been very glad I'm on the board there, and we've been very, very glad to have your books. And
Joel's book
Joel's
is called,
are sometimes
what kind
quite
of
outspoken.
citizen we educate? What
Yes,
kind of citizen?
and these are really, so you have somehow a family influence on politics, even if
And-
you're not publicly saying
Yes,
it.
and I'm glad about that.
Good.
And I'm proud. And I thought that little discussion about the feminist issue was absolutely appropriate for that film, and it really made it clear that I certainly stand for all of those things that all of you stand for, and even if I don't publicly, I vote, but I don't publicly go on a political bandwagon.
But, well, I found myself in an awkward position because I would also not necessarily say I'm a feminist, and yet I am. And
Well, you carried your firstborn in a sling when I was a student, when nobody else brought a child to work. And I do remember that.
well, I don't know whether that's being a feminist or going to work, but in any case, well, I see there's a 1-minute warning. That sounds ominous, but I hate to end this discussion because it's such fun and there are lots of other questions. But let me, one question, which is one that was one of the ones that we received, and I would ask that, but I think I already know the answer. The question was, and this is a day after your 91st birthday, a great celebration. Is there sex after 90?
The answer is theoretically yes.
Just theoretically? Oh, no. Well, then there's a role for abstract social science theory.
So I did a book called Sex After 50, and I certainly can expand. But as you have seen with Diane Sawyer, there was another sentence that Fred Westheimer used to say. Not only that he comes out really beautifully in the film, I'm very glad about that, but Fred at one other point said to Diane Sawyer about when she asked about sex, he said, Diane, you know that the shoemaker's children don't have shoes. I have that second.
Oh, well, that's a great one. Well, let me say, I have a saying to myself, and I think it's something that I keep repeating, and I think you're a wonderful example, that those of us who have the blessing of unexpected life expectancy, which some of us have, should follow the tables, have a duty to keep on giving examples of what can be done with continuing activity, continuing conversations across generations.
That's why I say not to retire, but to rewire.
And I think you are the best example of someone who doesn't retire, rewires, and will continue. And last night, there are plans for your birthday. Next year, the following year, on to 100 and beyond. There's certainly sex after 100. So thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Happy birthday. Let's all say happy birthday, Dr. Ruth.
So we have a little song that was written at Teachers College. Maybe we could all sing happy birthday in honor of Dr. Ruth.
Great. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Dr. Ruth.
Nice.
Happy
91.
birthday to you.
Rabbi LeBeau, come here. Rabbi LeBeau, come here.
Yes.
Rabbi LeBeau, come here.
Thank you all for
Thank you.
coming. There's a reception across the hall in room 150. Books are on sale in room 146. Please join us as we celebrate Dr. Ruth and come have your chance to have your book signed and meet Dr. Ruth. And I'd also like to thank our co-sponsors for the evening, the Department of International Transcultural Studies, as well as the Offices of Student Affairs and Student Activities. Thank you all for joining us and enjoy the party. Please join us outside. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.